welcome to my guide for installing a secondary domain controller for an existing domain. So we're going to start by setting the static IP address, and for this we're going to want 10.1.2.2 255. In case I have a /16 subnet. Gateway I want R1, which is that. Preferred DNS is DCO1. Secondary is going to be itself. Tertiary is going to be Google. Next, we're going to set the computer name. Open Server Manager. Go to Manage. Add roller feature. You actually have to wait for it to load, which is now. We want to install Active Directory Domain Name Services and its dependencies. And after the installer gets to 100%, you can close it, and then you can begin promoting the server to a domain controller. So we want to add a domain controller to an existing domain. The existing domain we want to add it to is unix.us. And we're going to do it under my username, which needs to be a domain admin. Or it needs to have the role can add domain controllers. So we're going to need to do it with specify the current credentials. Make this clear. So we're going to be joining the domain unix.us, and we're going to be doing it with the credentials. Specify the domain that the credentials exist under. And then the credentials that have access to add new domain controllers. I'm going to set the DSRM recovery password. And there is no parent to unix.us. And we're going to replicate from DCO1 because that's the only other domain controller. And we're going to set the install locations to defaults. And if you wanted to run this as a script in PowerShell, you could just copy this, which would be convenient if you were going to do tons of secondary, tertiary domain controllers. But we're not, so we won't. So now we're going to be signed out, which is kind of irrelevant because the system restarts before it signs you out. So the system is just going to restart in a second. Then we just want to make sure that we can log in as ourselves. And we can. So we have a secondary domain controller. So there's one last thing that we're going to test, and that's that we can resolve out domain request from the first domain controller against the second. So we just used dco2 to look up the DNS name dco1.enix.us, and it resolved out to the correct address. So that's it. And we can move on to other tasks.